हेलो फ्रेंड्स, केजी क्लासेस में आपका स्वागत है। आज हम आपको जॉन कीट्स के शॉर्ट आंसर के बारे में बताएंगे। क्वेश्चन फर्स्ट, राइट ए नोट ऑन जॉन कीट्स एज ए पोएट ऑफ ब्यूटी, हिज कल्ट ऑफ ब्यूटी। आंसर, कीट्स इज primarily the poet of beauty. His conception of beauty evolves with the growth of his poetic genius. For him, poetry was simply the incarnation of beauty, and the pursuit of beauty in the abstract was his life mission. In his earlier poems, he regards beauty as merely a physical fact and cares only for physical beauty: light feet, dark, violent eyes, and parted hair, soft dimpled hands with neck and creamy breast. By and by, his conception of beauty, when in the very first line of Endymion, he strikes the keynote of all his works. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. This line emphasizes the spiritual and intellectual side of beauty. Again, in his greatest ode on a Grecian urn, his conception of beauty Biden in it, he sums up his ideal of beauty or his philosophy of beauty thus: beauty is truth, truth, beauty, this is all ye know on earth and all ye knows to know. In the final stage, Keats see all things of the world in their beauty, and he declares that whatever the imagination seized is beauty. But the whole of Keats' poetic creed lies in his identification of truth with beauty. Beauty is truth, truth beauty. This principle of beauty haunts Keats like a passion and pervaded all his works, but especially in the volume of 1820. He was not religious like Wordsworth, nor philosophical like Coleridge, nor desirous of serving humanity like Shelley, not even a lover of freedom like Byron. He was only a ardent worshipper of beauty. For beauty's sake, he would confine himself simply to a vivid and accurate description of beauty as he saw it in nature, in art, in myth, and in personal feeling. He paints it with an almost faultless perfection of form, of fullness of expression, which leaves no craving unsatisfied. He writes of his contribution: if I should die, I have left no immortal work behind me, nothing to make my friends proud of my memory, but I have loved the principle of beauty in all things. Next question, write a note on sensuousness of John Keats. Answer, closely connected with his cult of beauty is the most obvious and one of the most remarkable characteristics of beauty poetry: its abundant sensuousness. The universality of his sensuousness. Keats is sensuous in the sense that he delights and luxuriates in all these things which please the sense. He is mainly interested in sensation. By sensation, he means intuition, and he places it before reasoning when he says, "Oh, for a life of sensation rather than of thought." He is a poet of earth, and not like Shelley, who soared into heaven. He is a poet of perception rather than of contemplation and speculation, but his sensuous mind constantly passes from sensuousness into sentiments. A gradual evolution in his sensuousness is clearly perceptible from his earliest poem to his last. His early poems exhibit a purely physical and objective sensuousness, but slowly his feeling for beauty depend from physical sensation of emotion to emotion, and from emotion to a passion, which embraced his whole moral and intellectual being in his later poems. His originality in respect of sensuousness considered in this that he discovered in the most common objects either some rare beauty or sources of delight or comfort. Moreover, he claimed his loyalty to truth through his worship of beauty and his belief that beauty and truth were identical. Thus, in his cult of beauty, he never sacrificed moral sensibility. His sensuousness is equally perceptible in his wonderful felicity of expression, since he was a close observer of nature. The beauty of its sight, sound, and smells flashed upon his keen imagination, and with great vividness and great felicity of phrase, he exulted in describing them pictures quickly. Next question is write a note on attitude of John Keats towards nature. Answer: Wordsworth, Coleridge, Byron, Shelley, and Keats were all poets of nature, but in far different ways. Wordsworth and Shelley go behind the eternal phenomena of nature and philosophize over them. Wordsworth sees behind nature the spirit of God. Shelley sees behind it the spirit of love and liberty. They both spiritualize and intellectualize nature. They are concerned far less with depicting nature as it is than with marveling at and exulting in its hidden significances. They are in a way prophets of nature. On the other hand, Keats and Byron are primarily concerned with a frank expression of the sensuous joy derived from a close observation of nature external. Keats is an ardent lover of the beauties of nature. His appreciation of the common objects of nature is genuine and warm, but he loves what is beautiful in nature for its own sake, without any mystical or philosophical meaning or spiritual motive. He never tries to seek any moral meaning of spiritual message from natural phenomena. It is the sensuous beauty of nature that appeals to him most. That is why he is content to depict her through the senses, the colors, the scents, the touch, and pulsating music. These are things that stir him to his depth. Thus, like a sympathetic observer, he watches and enjoys her beauty objectively and faithfully depicts it in vivid and pictorial language. His insight into her silent operation, which the common eye cannot see, is remarkable. In the words of Calvin, he seems to see things invisible to the physical eyes, but which are felt and divined rather than seen. Next question, write a note on Hellenism of John Keats. Answer: Keats is truly Hellenic in spirit. His Hellenism is merely his imaginative escape from the world of reality. He worshippers of beauty that he was. He sought after it wherever he could find it, so he returned to Greek mythology and medieval romance for beauty, which greatly fascinated him. But he knew little of Latin and none of Greek, and with what little he knew of Greek art and poetry from his reading of Campbell's Homer and the Iliad marvels introduced to him by Haydn, he could as easily enter into the spirit of antiquity as Shakespeare could. According to Professor Jebb, his natural affinity with the Greek mind was certainly a surprising thing for a London-born son of a library stable keeper. Not only is his art classic, but his very temper is library stable keeper. Not only is his art classic, but his very temper is Greek. No doubt his poetry is ultra romantic, but it is also shows the restraint of the great classical master. His Hellenism may be considered in a number of other ways. Of all the English poets, he alone approaches the Greek in his cult of beauty. Of course, he has a passion only for a sensuous and the imaginative beauty, while the Greek conception of beauty went further and included within its scope the beauty of intellect and characters too. See, again he has the Homeric simplicity and directness of expression. The moreover he resembles Homer and Greek tragedian in his gift of the personification of the powers of nature, as for example in his ode to autumn he personifies autumn and the various activities of the region. Lastly, he shows everywhere a great delight in the beautiful mythology of the Greek. His Hellenism may be summed up in the words of Sidney Colvin. Thus, he indeed resembles the Greek in his vivid sense of the joyous and multitudinous life of nature, and he loved to follow them in dreaming of the powers of nature as embodied in concrete shapes of supernatural human activity and grace. Moreover, institutions for every kind of beauty being admirably swift and true. When he sought to conjure up vision of the classic poet past or images from classic fable, he was able to do so often magically well. Next question. While write a note on the diction, rhythm and music of John Keats. Answer. John Keats had greatly enriched his vocabulary by his intensive and wide reading of the great master Shakespeare, Milton, Spenser and Dryden, as well as his great contemporaries. His vocabulary was marvelous, complete and unconventional. Besides, he was the past master in the art of harmonizing thoughts and its expression, and had Shakespeare's gift of frequent imaginative phrase, melody and word painting. Many of his pen pictures, and particularly those of Grecian urn, are perfect, and in his art of creating perfect pictorial effect, he compares favorably with any good painter. He is very keenly alive of the splendor and beauty of words and phrases. His pen picture never fail to impart pure aesthetic delight to the reader's imagination, and often he achieved the best pictorial effects by a single master stroke of compound words. Besides, the melody of his verses is superb. According to Mr. Colvin, Keats impart a rare charm and musical quality to his verse by richness of his vowel and diphthong sequences, and rarely fails in delicacy of musical and metrical error, or in variety and classicity of sentence structure. In short, the flow of his lines has a sweetness, a rare lucidity and loveliness, a lyric rapture, a wonderful felicity of fresh profusion of compound words and rare pictorial effects which haunts the reader's imagination and leave a lasting and lingering impression upon it. In his great odes and sonnets, his style and music become impassioned, noble, and perfect. This is why Arnold rightly remarks Shakespearean work it is not an imitative indeed of Shakespeare, but Shakespearean because its expression has that rounded perfection and felicity of loveliness of which Shakespeare is a great master. Once Keats expressed the hope, I think I shall be among the English poets after my death. Thanks, best of luck.